Hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of Tips and Tricks in Blackboard. My name is Curtis Eckerman, and today I'm going to cover the gradebook in Blackboard, especially how I set up and organize and manage the gradebook here in Blackboard. I've been using the gradebook in Blackboard and before that WebCT for close to 20 years now, and while I'm not a huge fan of some of its functionality, I've gotten used to it, and so I'm going to share some of the things that I do because I believe over the years I've discovered, or at least implemented, a number of things that have made it easier to for me to manage the gradebook and for the students to view the gradebook. So let's get started. I'm currently in an old course of mine, and I've added some test students, and we are in the gradebook, the full gradebook here. The first thing that I would recommend as a manager of a gradebook in Blackboard is to clean up your gradebook. And that is to say, as I'm scrolling over here and looking at various columns, try to get rid of columns that you don't need. One, you want to get rid of them for the students, so it reduces the clutter in their grading book, and also it reduces it for you as well. So for instance, in this case, student ID, last access, and availability are probably things I don't need. Now, I will oftentimes use last access. I'll keep it up if I have an online class to help me get a sense of when the student has last come to visit Blackboard. But I'm just going to get rid of it. I'll click down on the drop-down menu. Go ahead and I can hide from the instructor view. Now, if it's a grade column, you can not only hide it from the instructor, but you can also just simply hide it from the student. So if you just hide it from the student, it'll show up as an X or a slash to it, and that means that you can see it, but the student cannot. But in this case, I want to go ahead and show them that, and over here, I'm just going to hide it. The reason it doesn't have hide from student here is because these are not viewable by the student in the first place. So last access, I'm going to hide as well. Now, I could also do this in another place. And I'll go to that in a moment, and I'll show you that here. But under management, under column organization, I can also hide something. In addition, if I want to show these columns again, I would go to manage columns and go ahead and show them. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this for now. So I would go through all my various columns. You know, I've got my assignment set up, my lab report set up, my projects, all these things set up, and they're showing up in the gradebook. And I would go through this and make sure that there isn't anything here that I would want to get rid of. For instance, if maybe I've got an old assignment or a calculated column that I just don't want to show anymore. It's just best to clean that all up. Now, we're going to do some organization. I'm going to scroll back to the beginning. And I'll show you how to do that. But the first thing we want to do before really continuing on with our gradebook, and this is something you should do while you're setting up your course, is think about how your course is broken up. This particular course is broken up into 5 units. Okay, so the best thing we can do for ourselves and for the students initially is to create what are called grading periods. I'm going to go ahead and go here. I've created some of the grading periods here first. You can see that I've created Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and Unit 4. And I've got a grade unit a period here as well. I'll show you why that's the case here in a moment. But to create a grading period, I'm just going to type in Unit 5 because I have 5 units. I can put a description there if I want. I can actually add everything between particular date ranges. I'm just going to leave it as the default because I'm going to just add things to this unit manually. So hit submit, and so I've got my grading periods. All right, so this course is organized into 5 units, and I've got 5 units, and you'll see here quickly that this is useful for us. So let's go back now to column organization. Okay. Column organization is a better way to view your gradebook in terms of where the columns are and how they're organized. So if I click on that, as I scroll down, you have the top material here that is the name and first name and user ID, and you can see that I've hidden these particular things. I could actually go back up here and show them if I wanted to. I really don't want to though. As I scroll down, you can see the grading periods I just made. Grade, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, and Unit 5. Okay? There's nothing in them at the moment. Instead, they're all down here in a big list. These things are not in a grading period. Okay, so this gets to how to use these grading periods. I can use them to organize my material. All right, so I want to go ahead and put everything in their various units. I'm just going to do Unit 1 for now. So what I would do is I'm going to, in this case, actually I'm going to do Unit 2 because I don't see my Exam 1 for the moment. I'm going to do Unit 2. Let's say that Unit 2 includes my exams, Lab Exam 2. It includes Assignment 4 and 5 and 6, and includes pre-lab quizzes 4 and 6, and lab reports 4, 5, and 6. Here we go. And then a project 3, and that's it. So those are all. Let's just say for demonstration purposes, those are the things that belong in Unit 2. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to change to grading period, and I'm going to put it in Unit 2. As I scroll up, there's everything in Unit 2. So now this is, first of all, it's organized everything by unit. I can see clearly everything in Unit 2. I can see the points associated with each assignment, with each exam, and so on. And so it's just a nice breakout of the unit. It also organizes this in the grading column such that everything is in order. So if I wanted to move units around, I could move the whole unit around within this, and it would order it in the grading column as well. So this is going to be nice for another reason, and I'll show you this in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of things. I'm going to put Exam 3 into Unit 3, and I'll put Exam 4 in Unit 4. Okay, so this just helps me break everything apart nicely. You can see Exam 3 here is now in Unit 3, and Exam 4 is in Unit 4. So what I would do is I will go through and I will add everything in each unit, every grade that's associated with each unit, and I'll put it in each individual unit folder here. And it's going to have more benefits than just organizing your columns, as we'll see here in just a moment. So I'm going to submit. So I need to make sure I submit here. And let me show you where this can be really handy. Actually, I need to do one more thing. I want to show you the reason why I have the grade column. Let's go back to column organization. Whenever I organize things in units, the total grade and the letter grade and that kind of thing gets kind of put at the end. So I'm going to move that to the grade section. So total points, percent grade that I've set up, letter grade. I'm going to move those to the grade portion. So they're just their own separate grade period here. And it'll move them to the front of the line on the a grade board, or on the grade book here. So here they are. The first 3 columns are now total points, grade, and letter grade. Okay, so let's say that first of all, I should also mention, if you're not familiar, this green check mark means that this is the the external grade, and if I hover over it, it says that this is the grade that shows externally when they're looking at the total points, let's say on their app or just on Blackboard. I'm going to go ahead and calculate. I want to calculate points, okay? And I can do that a number of different ways. I'm going to go to Edit Column Information, and I have a number of options here. I can rename it. So let's say that this is. Let's say I want to do. I want to do the grades for Unit 2. Grade for Unit 2. Okay, and I typically have different grade columns, or I'll update a grade column to represent grades for Unit 1, for Unit 2, and it kind of gives my students a running idea of how they're doing in the class. But let's just set up this grade for Unit 2. Well, in the past, you either selected all grades, or I would say, you shouldn't say the past. Most people either have all grades, or they'll select particular grades to assign to Unit 2. But because I set up some grading periods, all I need to do is select the grading period, and it will automatically put all of the material from Unit 2 into this grade, and we'll calculate accordingly. Okay? Now I will also make sure that this is shown to students and what have you. One little tip here, though, there's this little section right here that says calculate as running total. I tend to always put no, and the reason for that is that it can artificially inflate a grade if you put yes. So what it means by calculating a running total is it will just take the grades of the student that have been turned in and look at how they're doing on those grades. But let's say, for instance, that in Unit 2 they did not turn in an assignment. Unless you go and physically put a 0 in for that assignment, it will just assume, if it's on running total, it will just assume that it hasn't been turned in yet, and it ignores it. So if you click on no, in this case, it will calculate all the grades in Unit 2 and will assume if anything is missing that it is a 0. To me, this is a more honest assessment of a grade, and of course the student can know right away, there's something wrong with their grade. They can figure out what's wrong with that. Maybe they haven't turned something in, but it also gives you a better, as an instructor, gives you a better idea of where they are currently in their grade. So I'm going to submit this. And currently the, so for instance, in this case, the percent grade, this is based on the grade for unit, this is grade for Unit 2. And you can see what they have so far. And this is the grade percentage associated with that. Now, that's why we do periods, but also I can be a little fancier in the sense that one of the more traditional ways of doing more organization is to go in and create categories. So if I go to categories, there are a number of standard categories: blog, discussion, assignments, test, survey, and so on. But I can also create my own categories. And the reason you would do this would be to organize your grades even further, but it also can help you. For instance, I created this category, lab pre-quizzes. In some of my classes, I have quizzes associated with every lab, and so they take 14 quizzes, but I dropped the 2 lowest. By putting them in a category, it's going to allow me to add the quizzes as a category in my calculations and also allow me to drop 2 low quizzes. I can't do that manually by adding each pre-lab quiz individually. I'll show you that here in just a moment. I'm going to create another category just because I know I've missed one here, and I'm going to use lab reports as a category. And you can certainly put a description here. I'm going to leave it blank for the moment. And there it is. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Let's go back to column organization. And I'm going to take my lab reports. Okay, I'm going to find all the lab reports in this column organization. I'm going to click on them. You'll notice right now they have no category. And go down to the bottom, I change the category to lab reports. Okay, now that I've done that, let us say, for argument's sake, that this grade is not Unit 1 grade, but let's go ahead and edit this column information again. Let's say that this is lab report grade. Okay, and for this argument, let us say that I'm going to grade the lab reports, but I'm going to drop the lowest one. Okay, well, to do that, we would go down here. We're going to go ahead and select columns and categories. So at the top would be the individual columns, but down here are categories. I'm going to select lab reports as a category, and it will select all the lab reports that I just put into that category. It'll select all of them, and I'm going to drop the lowest grade here. I'm just do 1. I could drop 2 or 3 or however many, or I could drop a high grade as well. And as a result, now the new report is going to look at all of the new grade column is going to look at all the lab reports, and then it will drop the lowest. Right? And so that's a nice way to do this. This allows me to do a number of things. I can do this with exams. I can do this with any category of grade. I'm going to cancel this because I don't really want to do this. All right, the final thing I want to show you with the gradebook is that sometimes it is difficult to really get an idea of how your class is doing without really studying the grades and looking at the grades. And sure, I can go here to each student and look at how they're doing individually, but sometimes I just want to get an overall feel for how the class is doing. Well, there's an easy way to do that as well. And you go to manage color codes. Okay, to manage color codes, you click on it and you enable the color codes. Click on this to enable it, And as you scroll down, you'll see that there are, and you can actually delete this criteria and add criteria. But basically, it's going to look at a cell, and based on the criteria you've defined, it will color that box with different colors. So for instance, if an assignment or project or test is more or equal to 90% of the value of available, then it will color that box green. If it's between 80 and 89.9, it'll be blue, and so on. Okay, you can get more fine in how you do this. You can do 89.99. It occasionally happens that I get like an 89.4 average, and it doesn't color at all because it's not more than 90, but it's not within that parameter as well. So you can certainly make that a finer detail. That happens very rarely, but I'm going to leave it defined as is. Basically, it's going to color boxes green for an A, blue for a B, C for yellow, and so on down to red for F. I'm going to hit submit, and you will see the results immediately once it loads. All right, so currently the overall grade is showing an F, mainly because we don't have all the grades that are in that unit yet. But you can see, for instance, here in exam 2, this person made 100, this person made 83, 90, and 78. And you can see the different colors associated with those grades. So it's a nice visual way of kind of looking through your grade book and getting a sense, hey, that exam was harder than usual, or not very many people did very well on that particular assignment. Maybe there was something confusing. I use it a lot just to kind of get a visual idea of how my students are doing in the class on a particular assignment or a particular exam or a particular quiz. So this is a good tool for I would say managing your grade book, because it lets you get an idea of what's going on. There's certainly a lot of things you can do here with the grade book as well. Once you've got it set up in the way that you like it, once it's organized the way that you like it, there's all sorts of reports you can generate from your grade book. There are other things that you can do here, like creating smart views, which is a whole nother video in itself. So there's lots and lots of things you can do with the gradebook, but I just wanted to show you a few basic tips and tricks on how to set up, organize, and manage your gradebook. So in future videos, I'll show you some of the more details, like showing you how to set up smart views or how to do various reports. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you next time.